The prison boss, narcissist, her intimate partner, primary source victim speaks. Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I'm examining the behaviour that took place between Cherie Spencer, a narcissist, and her victim, Richard Spencer, who is now the former intimate partner, primary source, because they are no longer together. He left her, thus managing to escape, and she, of course, is now in prison. He found himself subjected to 2 decades of abuse, and he has been interviewed by the Daily Mail, which provides an opportunity to understand more of the mindset of a male victim of a female narcissist, and also provides me with an opportunity to dissect what he has to say and provide you with additional commentary and understanding. Mr. Spencer talks about the beginning of the relationship. Looking back to the start of their relationship, it is a miracle Richard can recall any fondness at all. For the first couple of years, it was 95% nice times and 5% not nice times, he says. Of course, within the first couple of years, he's in the golden period. Typically, the golden period between a narcissist and the intimate partner primary source lasts from anywhere from 6 months to 18 months, sometimes less, sometimes more. Here, it would appear that what would have happened is that for the most part it was going well and he didn't enter sustained devaluation, and what he will have experienced was occasional testing of him by the narcissism, and then, towards the end of this period, he would have entered the sustained devaluation. He explained that the behaviour evolved. By the time she was punching me so I was having to wear makeup to hide the bruises, the abuse had become the norm. This demonstrates the fact that he then entered into longer sustained periods of devaluing behaviour with shorter respite periods. He explains, I felt I deserved to be punished. This, of course, is the diminution of his self-worth and the corruption of his empathic trait of honesty to make him feel guilty. I lost my independence and willpower and just accepted that was how my life was going to be. In the end, she controlled everything, from which room I could sleep in to which toilet I could use. I was no longer me. This, of course, is typical of the behaviour of the narcissist, stripping the victim of their identity, self-worth, self-confidence, etc. When Richard met Cherie at a nightclub in 2000, he was a confident, fun-loving 23-year-old who went to the gym, loved music and travel, and had a wide circle of friends and liked nothing more than to spend time with his family. His mum had died when he was 9, potential vulnerability that a narcissist would exploit, of course. But he was close to his dad, younger sister and extended family, including a stepmother he now calls mum. Cherie, then 22 and hugely attractive, undoubtedly a somatic narcissist that would utilise her good looks and sex as a means to control Richard. He says she was fun, effervescent, really confident person who everyone liked. She'd do really kind things, false compassion, buy thoughtful gifts, bribery. He remembers an early romantic break in Venice before the violence began. I remember going to a Vivaldi concert in a church or cathedral and a meal at a nice restaurant afterwards. Walking back to the hotel by the canals was quite atmospheric, unlike memories of most of the other cities we went to, which are tainted by evenings when she became abusive. This, of course, is demonstrative of the way that the narcissist spoils occasions, and how, of course, that's marked in the memory of Mr. Spencer. Cherie, who was from childhood, didn't have the best childhood, he said. Cherie, who was from Sunderland, didn't have the best childhood, he says. She'd moved around a lot and witnessed abuse herself. This suggests, of course, a lack of control environment, which assisted in the formation of her own narcissism, and likely that she was exposed to a narcissist herself. She would go into detail about when her mum and dad got drunk. I wanted to help her. She was the first person I'd fallen in love with. Notice again how he's in a sense a sucker for this type of narcissist, whereby his emotional empathy causes him to want to rescue her, to protect her, to help her as a consequence of what has happened to her. The violence began a few months into their relationship when she was staying at his flat in Ipswich. The arguments would start always when she'd be drinking, he says. They could be about anything, normally something I'd done or not done. Of course, what's happening here is that her drinking was exacerbating the churning fury underneath so that she was less able to control it. And although Richard ascribes it to something he'd done or not done, which is in part correct, it was of course that he was actually threatening her sense of control. In the early stages it was pushing me, physical assault, breaking things, destruction of property, and slapping me, physical assault. The next day she'd be extremely apologetic, false contrition, and say she wouldn't let it happen again, future faking. She'd write little notes saying she loved me, flattery. I'd apologise too, because although I wouldn't have been the one shouting, I'd feel I played a role in the argument. Again, this is typical of an empathic victim who sees in shades of grey, that recognises that they played a part in the argument and therefore thinks, well, they've apologised, so should I. Of course, the apology that's given by the victim demonstrates that they continue to be under control and provides fuel. Cherie would explain her behaviour by saying, if you hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have done this. Blame shifting. You think, okay, I can see why she's saying that. Presence of emotional thinking blinding him to what's really going on. Why he didn't end their relationship when they were merely dating is something he still can't explain. Of course, the actual reason is that he was caught by his own emotional thinking. The addiction that he has to the narcissist wanted him to stay with her. And therefore, even though he was being mistreated, it still wasn't sufficient to him to walk away. I've got quite a lot of blank periods in my mind, he says. I felt like I was in love with her probably for years, and I thought she was with me. But looking back now, I don't think I call it love anymore. Well, it certainly isn't from her, because as a narcissist she's incapable of loving him, and he may well have loved her, although of course it was predicated on an illusion. He even excused her having an affair, commission of infidelity, lack of emotional empathy, with a friend of his in January 2007, because he says, it was my fault for working long hours and neglecting her. Again, typical of an empathic victim, whereby the narcissist mistreats him by having an affair, and, in order to try and find a reason as to why she would do that, ends up self-flagellating. I had an internet business I worked on in the evening because I wanted us to be financially secure. She said I'd also been disloyal by putting my family before her because I'd gone alone to a party at my auntie's. False accusation that she didn't want to go to on the night the affair began. Blame shifting. She said I deserved it. Blame shifting. How could I have thought she was right? He looks truly bewildered for a man who has lost all bearings on the narrative of his own life. He's now trying to fit together the jigsaw of his past from emails he has kept. Following her affair, Richard's relationship with his family, whom Cherie insisted judged her, paranoia, became increasingly distant. He saw friends less and less, isolation of the victim as a means to assert control. I've found lots of emails from Cherie telling me how much she loves me, hoovers, flattery, and that I am her soulmate, magical thinking. So I think the period after the affair and decided to make a go of things must have been a nice calm time leading up to our marriage. Notice how he is unable to really recall what went on without going to the emails. In actual fact, he was getting a respite period. Richard says now he still believed he loved Cherie on their wedding day in December 2009. Indeed, he probably did. So much so, he agreed to slip away to Thailand on the pretext of a holiday to marry her at a luxury beachfront hotel in the Phi Phi Islands without a single friend or family member present. Notice again the isolation that has occurred. It wasn't the best of days, he said. Cherie got drunk and angry. Ignition of fury with the people who came to do her hair and told them to get out. Corrective devaluation of tertiary sources. I made an excuse in my mind that she was being like that because of the pressure of the day. I even said to her, everyone has butterflies. Again, notice that because he doesn't know what he's dealing with, he attributes her behaviour to something which it actually isn't. Believe it or not, I felt marriage was a natural progression. When we came back, I wanted to think of it as a fresh start. Once again, evidencing the way that the victim thinks that this situation can be improved upon. But we never really got back on track. Indeed, the violence escalated, particularly when, year after year, they tried unsuccessfully to start a family. She'd say to me, when I have a baby, I'll be happy. Future faking. Guilt tripping. I won't mind you working all those hours. We actually had a phrase for it. Baby dance. And sometimes I had to dance twice a day. Assertion of control over him by sexual demands. If I wasn't physically able, she'd say things like, all you've got to do is perform, you're not a man. Sexual belittlement. As she got more desperate, she got really angry. The failure to have a child, of course, is a threat to control, thus igniting her fury. She talked about my size to insult me, belittlement. I resorted then to getting Viagra-type drugs online. There weren't any pleasurable feelings. After 3 fruitless years, they decided upon IVF. When the third cycle failed in February 2014, Cherie's violent explosions increased. Richard, of course, is well within the sustained period of devaluation here, with occasional respite periods. He still doesn't realise what it is that he's dealing with, and keeps trying to do his best to placate her, to appease her, but naturally, it doesn't work. In part 3, I will continue the analysis of this relationship based upon the information that the victim is providing.